Welcome to another episode of the Modern Facilities Management Podcast, brought to you by Stratum. I'm your host, Griffin Hamilton. This is the show where I interview industry experts who share their stories, strategies, and insights into modern-day facilities management. From hospitality to commercial real estate and everything in between, we'll learn what it really takes to succeed as a facilities manager. Good afternoon. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Modern Facilities Management Podcast. Today I've got Jason Callis with me. Jason, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you today, Griffin?
I'm doing well. I appreciate you taking the time to come on the show.
Well, thanks for having me. Appreciate the invite.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before we jump into the content here today, why don't you introduce yourself and tell the audience who you are and what exactly you do?
Sure. Appreciate that. So Jason Callis, I work for Goodwill, Central and Southern Indiana as a project manager in our facilities team. Also the president of the local IFMA Chapter of Indianapolis, and I've been in corporate facilities for going on 25 years now. So I've been through a lot of good transitions throughout the years for sure.
Yeah. And I know, IFMA has such a huge footprint across the country. And that is something that I wanted to talk with you a little bit more detail about. With you being president of the Indianapolis chapter, let's talk to that. So how long have you been involved with IFMA? How did you get involved? Tell us your story there.
Sure. So I'm actually going on my 19th year of being with IFMA here in Indianapolis. And I just, the first time I ever showed up for a program was at Conner Prairie, which is a local kind of live interactive park for kids and students to go talk a little bit about the old way of life per se. And they started talking about a project that I became very interested in from a volunteer perspective, and I was hooked immediately. And during the 19 years, I think I've sat on every committee that we have. Some we still have, and some we don't have any longer. But been exposed to a lot of good people along the way, and the different nuances that make up IFMA as a whole. Spent a year as vice president of our chapter before presidency. We're getting ready to wrap this term up, but I have one more term to serve starting July 1 for another year, and then I'll be immediate past president after that. So that's kind of my tenure with the IFMA so far. Looking forward to going to World Workplace this coming October down in Florida. So hopefully we'll be able to take part of that.
Yeah, it's been certainly an interesting year just around the world, obviously. I hate to keep bringing that up every episode, but it's hard not to talk about COVID with that being so relevant right now. But hopefully we're pushing past that. And I know there's some chapters out there that are starting to do more in-person events. Is that what's the time frame looking like for the Indianapolis chapter?
So we're trying to stay ahead of the curve, and we've really last month we went back live. It's a hybrid event. We had almost 40 people attend our live event, and we were talking about using technology to get back into the workplace. We had a couple of our sponsors that were there presenting on their technologies on different things for badge access and how to electronically use things to do your job, how to greet visitors, just commingle yourself with other employees, and then the elevation management world with Kone Elevator. They were able to show us some things on what they're doing to help keep things clean on elevators, escalators, and that was a hybrid event. So we had people online watching, and then we also had people in the audience as well. So almost 40 people. Total is about 50 on both venues. So very, very pleased with the outcome of that and just how people were receptive to it. I think everyone I spoke to said, "Man, I can't believe we're actually back in person. Thank you for doing this. We're looking forward to it." This month on the 26th, I believe, we're going to do an after hours, what we call our 508 Club. It's going to be held at a local facility that is very close to the Indianapolis 500 or the Motor Speedway. And we've already got a lot of people wanting to sign up for that just because it's outside. Indy in the month of May is amazing. I've lived here my whole life, and I can tell you the people will be anxious and very glad to be out and be able to enjoy the festivities that comes along with the 500 this year.
Yeah, and you mentioned that you had the hybrid event recently. Is that going to stay consistent, do you think?
We're going to continue to use it so long as it is productive, so long as it's being used. We have the opportunity of one of our sponsors, Diversified, is actually provides the technology for us as an in-kind as part of their sponsorship. So we have that opportunity to bring a pretty high level of hybrid model to our members, as well as anyone who wants to join us that's not a member. That will continue to use that until it's no longer needed.
And what's interesting to me, I looked at all the networking that I've done throughout my career, and I'm in Atlanta. And so when I say Atlanta, people immediately associate traffic. And I mean, that's true, right? And especially
Sure.
after work, everyone's trying to get to set event or get home. And it was always a hassle going out. Do you foresee this hybrid model or the adoption of these remote technologies to allow you to remote in? Has that had an impact on membership, or do you foresee that getting more people involved with IFMA?
Well, I'm a professional member, so I'm a facilities guy. There's been plenty of times where I have every intention in the world of showing up for that program, and something breaks loose. A widget breaks here, a widget breaks there. Someone set off the fire alarm. The power has gone out. And you just can't be there to be live and in person. So we want to be able to provide as many opportunities and tools to anyone who wants to be a part of the programs or the education opportunities that we have. That so long as it's being used, we'll make every effort to keep it in line and available as a resource. Because we want to reach those individuals who can't actually leave their facilities during the day, especially for lunch. We get it. It's a commitment, but we're thinking outside the box and trying to really find good resources for people to utilize in order to learn that much more about facility management and all the trends that's coming along just day by day, especially right now.
Yeah. And from a membership perspective, did you guys see a bump over the last year? How did the world turning upside down? How did that impact memberships and spreading the word about IFMA and facilities management?
So we spent some time, mining the data around that, and it's hard to really put your finger on what's really caused some of it. We just actually did a little bit of a study last week on some of the fluctuations in the membership, whether it's gone down or up from our previous at this time last year. The thing that we found most, people have left companies or they have switched position within an organization that where they may not see IFMA being the most appropriate avenue for them to be participating in. We saw a little bit of decrease. We've seen some what we would consider some really influential or influencers here in the local market from a facilities perspective join us that have never joined before and are becoming engaged into some of our programs. We have a great roadmap drawn out for everyone for the rest of the year in programs in our education department. We're really looking forward to some of the great things coming up the rest of this year and then going into next year. But it's fluctuated, but it's nothing that's been out of control either way. We feel like it's weathered the storm and we're climbing back up. So
That's great. That's great to hear. And I know one of the missions of IFMA is really spreading the word about the industry and obviously having new members join, but maybe not necessarily folks that are already in the industry, but more or less interested in facilities management as a career path and what it takes to get into the career. And I know we talked about this previously and kind of transitioning over to the entry into facilities management, the difference between a 4-year degree versus trade schools. So let's talk about that. What are your thoughts on the different avenues of getting either formalized education or going through a trade school to get into facilities management?
So yeah, that's a great topic that we consistently are talking about in our board meetings, sidebar conversations. We recently renamed our education portal to FM forums, where we're taking those deep dives into different subject matters to really bring a lot of good topics to the forefront for our members, our non-members, or anyone who wants to join. And some of the things that we're just looking at is supporting individuals with what they're going to be best at, whether it's going into a 4-year academic program or if it's going straight into a specific trade, electrical, mechanical, plumbing, whatever it may be. We support everyone, and whichever avenue that they decide is best for them, because there are, I think there's pros and cons to each side, and we really just do our best to provide the most educational opportunities to support those individuals through their journey in whatever career they're really focused on.
Yeah, and I know I've seen that IFMA has had really been intentional on creating relationships with different colleges and universities, formalizing the education. I've discussed on the show previously about how people just kind of fall backwards into the industry and into this
Sure.
career path. So is your chapter doing anything in particular? Are there any colleges and universities or schooling in Indiana or throughout that region of the country?
Actually, we have one of the individuals on our FM forums, our education committee. He's the director of the master's program at IU here locally in IUPUI for the facility management program. So we have in-house experts on these things on a given day-to-day basis. And Matt Ray is really heavily involved in our chapter, and we definitely appreciate Matt. But we definitely do whatever we can to partner with IFMA International as a whole for our credentialing program, getting people connected as best as we can through that process, and then helping them follow any career path that they're looking at. And there could be a lot of different things that they want to be focusing on. And a lot of times people in trades end up in facility management because they understand the mechanics and the aptitude that it takes to run facilities from that perspective. So, we just really try to support anyone and whichever journey that they're trying to follow at the time.
Yeah, that's great. And let's switch gears here for a little bit because I know you have a day job working with Goodwill.
Sure.
So wearing multiple hats here. So talk to me about that because I know you're managing all sorts of projects surrounding facilities for Goodwill. And I frankly have never talked or had too much in-depth conversation around nonprofits, especially one with the footprint the size of Goodwill. So speak a little bit more to what you're doing day to day for Goodwill.
So, last year changed a little bit of the scope of my position to which I was hired for. Initially, facilities project manager, really just focusing on all of our capital projects. Last year, due to some difficult decisions that the organization had to make, we all absorbed additional roles through that. And because my past has a really large operations background and a lot of experience to it, I took on basically our operations team, managing all of our contractors that from a day-to-day or the operations side of our business. So, it's been a blessing for sure, being able to touch literally every aspect of our facilities group for Goodwill. We're part of the Central and Southern Indiana portfolio. Excuse me. And, we're just taking every day, day by day, making good changes and making good decisions for the betterment of our employees and all the individuals that we support throughout the community.
And that's a prime example of a facilities manager just kind of getting thrown into the fire and there's no 9 to 5. Here's your job description and this is going to be it forever. Just right. Another example of that happening. Sure. And how many stores are in your region up there?
We have 95 retail locations throughout the state of Indiana.
And you're traveling to all 95?
Not all 95. I just this past weekend was someplace. I was like, I didn't realize we had a store there because I don't always, I'm not always engaged into the day-to-day life of some of our locations. But anything that we're remodeling, construction's involved. A lot of times we just kind of joke, well, you won't see me after this because I've built it and then I'm moving on to the next adventure. But really supporting our southern portfolio right now with some great projects in Corydon and Madison, Indiana. Just finished up a brand new location in Floyd's Knobs, which is down in the same region. We're currently building a brand new location in Danville, which is the west side of Indianapolis. that Danville's never had a Goodwill, so it's going to be a brand new location for our customers out there.
Got it. That's very interesting. And I know, I mean, with these projects coming on, and I've talked to several folks where the actual physical space in every area has been impacted by COVID, but the physical space for retail in particular has had a huge impact on the design as we look forward. How are you guys taking that into consideration, and what adjustments have you had to make?
We did our best to follow all the CDC guidelines um, for our environments, whether it's the front of the house or the back of the house, sales floor, back rooms, our outlet locations. We have 16 schools around the state, as well our Excel centers. So we applied the principles to which each county was going by on the CDC recommendations, and as well as local officials. Excuse me, to ensure that we were always keeping the safety first and foremost in our mind for not only our employees but our shoppers, visitors, our students, et cetera, to ensure that everyone stayed in that safe 6 foot distance.
And are you, from a design, as you mentioned that there's one location or one area in your region that has never had a store before, and it sounded like it was new construction, new design there. Are you changing the design, or is that in discussion across Goodwills of what we could expect to see from the actual physical design for each location?
This one was actually designed, built, and scoped before this happened. So at that time, we weren't taking that into consideration. Each location and really any environment can be changed and incorporate the proper decisions based upon remaining in those safe pathways to not exchange air and to remain in those safe distances. So nothing that I believe that we would be building would be altered too much for that, but always keep in mind that things can change, so we'll always be agile to make those decisions if we need to.
As we have to be.
Exactly.
And looking at like Goodwill, I've been going to Goodwill and donating to Goodwill. I've been on both sides of it for my entire life. How is that over the last year? I know you and I had talked about that previously. With everyone staying home, how did that impact the donations for Goodwill?
Well, that actually impacted us quite significantly. We've taken in more donations than we ever have had. And I don't know the number off the top of my head, but I know it's 2 or 3 times what our normal volume is by far. And just trying to find a space, honestly, to store and warehouse a lot of these great products. And I can tell you, just being in the store and in the different locations, there's some great things people are donating that other people want. And we're doing the best we can to get those things distributed and out on the shelves for people to look at and purchase as quickly as possible.
Yeah, that's great, and I certainly need to check out my local source here in Atlanta with that knowledge.
Yeah, I have people all the time tell me, "Hey, I took like 4 truckloads over to the Goodwill the other day." It's like fantastic, and it's like we take anything, so bring it. You never know.
That's great. And looking at, you mentioned your entire region, communication. I imagine you guys have a pretty large team having to manage 90 plus locations. How has communication been impacted, and what best practices have you implemented to make sure that you're over communicating, nothing's falling between the cracks, etc.?
So, from a leadership perspective, we have an amazing team that's really engaged into just exactly that, is making sure we're educating to all individuals that work for Goodwill in whatever capacity that is. And coming from our CEO down the line, our leadership team really does a great job of sending out weekly communications on everything that's going on in every capacity and every facet of our business. And everybody sees the same thing every Monday. And I know that our team works very, very hard to put the best, most effective communication together possible to share with everybody all at the same time. So we're all hearing the same message every Monday at the same time. Content doesn't change from meeting to meeting. You see the same thing over and over.
Yeah, and that's been obviously, it's important for any organization to communicate and have that transparency on who's doing what. But I mean, that's been even that much more important over the last year, making sure everyone's on the same page there.
Yep. So absolutely.
Yeah, and so I guess sticking with retail and facilities management in retail, what are the main differences with you obviously having currently in the position of president for the IFMA chapter? You've been exposed to, I'm sure, several different industries. What is unique about the retail space from a facility standpoint that makes it challenging and I would say fun? Let's throw fun out there.
Sure. So, that is a great question. I've been blessed with a lot of different um, positions in my career, from K through 12 to Class A office, healthcare, retail. Some of the things that we really focus in on is the indoor air quality and ensuring that when we have our guests in the space that they feel that they're comfortable with the humidity, the actual temperature itself. But now we're really focusing on protecting folks with some different types of systems to flush out and or just really mitigate any type of um, I guess any kind of virus that may be a part of that environment, unbeknownst to ourselves. But lighting is a really big thing. Making sure that the color index is exactly where it needs to be to show the best color on all the textiles that are available to our customers for sale. Just the flow of the store. Some of our marketing, whether it's inside or exterior or interior marketing schemes that our team puts together, and we have an amazing marketing team that work very very hard to do an amazing job to be as relevant as possible with the best information, and just being able to have the basically the clothes in a certain way, in certain fashion that folks really want to go to Goodwill and know that they're always going to be able to find something.
What do you think is the biggest challenge? And I know that there's such a wide uh, range of responsibilities just for facilities managers in general, but what is the most challenging piece or aspect of facilities manager job, industry aside?
Just being able to be at all the places you need to be at one time, and managing your bandwidth and your capacities to be able to respond to everything you need to in a timely manner, and ensuring that the facilities stay safe, and managing our expenses and our workflow to ensure that everything that we do is the best all the time, knowing that we're not going to always do that, but always trying to mitigate the risk and financing around or expenses around everything we do to keep the stores up, running, and the most well presented product as possible.
Yeah, I think that if there's anyone outside of the scientific community that's going to figure out a way to clone themselves, I'm sure facilities managers are going to be at the top of the list.
Yeah, I have a lot of sidebar conversations with people out in the public quite a bit about facility management, and I love talking about IFMA, love bragging about it, and talking about how to manage ourselves in public now.
Yeah, and that's where I get excited about the industries because it has constantly evolved, which can be stressful, of course, where there's always something new being thrown at you. But the people that are in the industry that have signed up for this type of career, I mean, they get excited about it. You get
Sure.
excited about what is new each and every day, and that's a great segue into the future of facilities management, right? Where there's a huge there's in the very near future going to be a huge exodus of talent due to retirement, frankly, being the number one factor there. And we've got to broadcast what facilities management is as best as we can and really get this new wave of FMs out there. And so I know IFMA's having a huge program with that. What else or what could someone do? What would be the first step if you're interested in the industry? To get involved and to really take that first step into becoming a facilities manager?
Yeah, so that's another great question, and for myself, I started off in the maintenance department at a hospital when I was in college. I was moonlighting, changing light bulbs, doing minor work orders, and I knew I was going to have to start from the ground level. And I think mechanical aptitudes is very important, but there's plenty of soft skills that are equally as important to be able to to do that job as being a facility manager. And you really can be any different things. I mean, we have so many different opportunities to engage different types of, uh, you know, analysts are used more and more than ever has been for just to look at the data around what we do and how we do it to, having electricians that's on site, on staff, whether it's mechanical, the plumbers, carpenters, um, it can be really anything coming from a trade, going into facility management. I was working at this hospital, going through college at the same time, graduated with a degree in business and a degree in accounting. And the CEO would come back and chat with us guys in the maintenance shop every once in a while. He goes, "So what are you going to do now?" I was like, "I really don't know." 22-year-old kid, and I had no idea. And he goes, "Well, why don't you go into facility management?" I go, "What's that?" And, the rest is history. 25 years later, I'm still doing it, still love it, and obviously support our young professionals who are just starting off in facility management. And we're really trying to support that. I actually had a call today about what's it look like for young professionals, facilities. Analytics and data is used more and more than it's ever has. So having a great understanding of just using your computer and, whether it's Excel or Google Sheets, just being able to understand numbers and be able to make them work for you.
A good question here. Well, I guess you'll be the judge if it's a good question. Um, did you ever think technology would play as big of a role in a facilities manager's job as it currently does?
I, I know I'm not the only person that thinks this, but growing up, in the 80s and 90s, you see all these the Jetsons per se. I'll just use the cartoon, the Jetsons. You knew it was going to eventually, technology was eventually going to really have a huge factor in our day-to-day lives. And I could be on my phone and do literally anything I need to do. Not as easy, but literally anything I need to do for my job. I mean, it's looking at drawings, even amending drawings, to having a phone call just like this. I can FaceTime someone, and it just makes our jobs easier, definitely faster, more productive, um, seamless, and just the factor of being able to accomplish the things we need to. Technology is a great resource for us now.
Yeah, and you hit it earlier as far as the big data analytics, right? And the
Right?
relatively newer strategies of predictive and even prescriptive maintenance, where you could understand, I mean, using this analytics, you can understand not only when something is going to break down, but what specific component is going to break down. And I always think back to the IBM Watson commercial when they go in to fix the elevator and they're like, "It's not even broken." Well, that is as real as it can be.
Right.
uh, but yeah, that is just something that I always think back on when I look at just how it's progressed over the years of starting out with so many people starting out in that just maintenance technician role, and like you started at the ground level and then just worked their way up, and now we're getting into analytics and finance and project management. It's just a whole spectrum of responsibilities that they have to take on.
Sure. I'm blessed just because of my accounting background to be able to understand the numbers and be able to talk to our finance team, our accounting team about depreciation and what's a capital expense, what's just a normal operations expense, and how we can allocate those funds appropriately. And it's just having the education is obviously tremendously valuable in order to be able to go with the flow as technology continues to develop each and every day, is be able to understand and interpret it and say, may not know it now, but I'm going to figure it out, just because we've had those opportunities in the past. So
Yeah, and using that technology and the data, what do you feel are the most important KPIs to be measuring?
wow. Usefulness, really. I mean, just how does it really truly apply? How does it help us um, do our jobs better? What value we're bringing to the organization through the metrics that we're capturing on work order completion or the quality of the work. How if it's a regionalization project with our maintenance team, how are we actually tracking who goes where, and what time do things start? What time do things stop? When does that widget normally break? Just because those KPIs are in place to be able to determine. And you said a minute ago, having that predictive and preventive maintenance plan in place really helps you continue to develop the data to prevent any kind of downtime with any equipment whatsoever.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, it's really interesting to really see what kind of impact these strategies have, how you can really dive in at whatever level you'd like to see where you are being efficient, where there's room for improvements, and how that has an impact on the organization as a whole. Because as we know, maintenance is a huge piece of every company, but it follows the overall goal and strategy of the company as a whole. So
Right.
it's walking that line and balancing the two between your siloed maintenance department and the overarching company.
Right.
Well, before we wrap this up, I have one question that I always ask people, which is who or what had the biggest impact on your career getting into facilities management?
Gosh, that's a great question. Wasn't ready for that one. I was driving home, make sure I had some peace and quiet to take this. It actually kind of goes back to when I was working at this hospital. It's a rehabilitation hospital, and literally just 22-year-old kid just walked out of college with 2 degrees, and what are you going to do with them now? And I didn't know. I loved working with the guys. I loved doing what I was doing. And when Kim Eicher, our CEO at the time, approached me about it and was just catching up over small talk. And when he said, "So what are you going to do now?" I don't know. And then he said facility management, which obviously was the catalyst to get me where the point I'm in now. And I've had some great leaders along the way in different capacities that have obviously encouraged me to do better for myself, for my family, and obviously trying to create new value for the facility management organization. I worked for an international company for years that my direct supervisor was heavily involved in IFMA up in Chicago, and I was down here in Indianapolis. And John Strike was someone who I obviously would consider someone who helped me take those good steps, good mentor for myself, and just continue to strive. Always enjoyed being a part of IFMA. During that time, I earned my certification in facility management, the CFM, and it's been a good run for sure. And but to point out someone other than that, I think that's probably about it, and just my own will to succeed.
Yeah, and I don't like prepping people for that because that reaction is what I love, because it usually comes as I don't even know where to begin, because it's so hard to get and to progress through this career without having several people helping you and pointing you in the right direction along the way. And you're certainly paying it forward with being involved as heavily as you have been throughout your career with IFMA and what you guys are doing there.
Sure. So yeah, and even when I was, now you got all these things going on in my mind. I want to sit there and recognize some people. And the one person I would say more than anybody else in my whole life, his name is Red Bledsoe. No longer with us, but someone I started working for when I was 16 till I was 22. And I can tell you, I've done everything I can possibly think from a facilities perspective, working with him, for him, whether it was turning a wrench, replacing a light bulb, putting a shingle up on a new roof. It all goes back to him, really.
That's great. And that influence at such a young age, getting into the career, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, Jason, thank you so much for the time. Where could folks find you? If they want to reach out to you, or
find me on LinkedIn. I'm Jason Callis. I'm out there on LinkedIn all the time. Our IFMAIndy.org webpage, you can find us there under the chair, the board, and pretty easy to find us. Pretty much anybody anymore. So those two avenues are probably the easiest.
Yeah, definitely not your home address if that's where you're.
I wasn't going to go there.
Well, Jason,
but I'm sure people could probably find it with our technology anyway. So what difference does it make?
That is probably true, but we'll encourage people to not go for that. But Jason, once again, thank you for taking the time to connect. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you, and thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Modern Facilities Management Podcast. Make sure to subscribe for future episodes and visit our website, stratumcommunity.com, for more facilities management content.